Say hello. I'll say hello. My name is Carly Shea, and I'll be your guide for the next 20 minutes or so. And I'll just warn you guys, I'm the only person working, so if someone pulls in or the phone rings, I'm gonna have to run away for a minute.
Okay.
So you might just have to bear with me here. But I'm gonna start by just telling you guys a little bit about the center and just why it's all here in the first place. So Shelley and Casey Black, they started this all, and they live in that house right behind us. So they are incredibly dedicated people. Now, when they had first started raising the wolves back in 1998, the original focus was actually film and photography. So they were doing work with commercials, documentaries, all that kind of stuff. Now, once they got involved in all of that, they really didn't like it. Because it turns out that everybody in the film industry wants the big bad wolf. They want the growling and the snarling, and that's not how they are. There has actually never been a documented attack of a healthy, wild, and non-habituated wolf on a human being. Ever. So the key word there is the big one. And non-habituated is meaning that they're not used to people or they don't get their food from us. So of course when we do have animals in captivity or we're leaving out garbage and food for wild animals, that is when the problems arise. So Shelley and Casey decided that they were just going to lean towards educating the public. Now the doors to the center here opened in 2002. All of the wolves you'll see here are spayed and neutered. We don't do any breeding. That's just because once they are bred into captivity, they can never be released to the wild, so there's more than enough captive animals out there. There's no need for us to be adding into those populations. Also, none of our wolves have ever come from the wild, so all of these guys have been born in other zoos and facilities. Now, we've chosen to imprint them, and imprinting means we've socialized them with a lot of people from a very young age. So in order to imprint successfully, it has to be done within the first 24 days of life. So basically as soon as their eyes open. So these guys were bottle fed by the Blacks in that house. They basically slept in their bed with them until they were big enough to come out and be part of this pack. So the upside of that, they're friendly, they're comfortable around us and in these enclosures, and that means we can take them out for walks and for exercise. So 3 to 4 times a week we do take our wolves on walks. Now when we do that, we'll put them on a leash here. Hi Flora! We'll walk them to the truck, drive them way out into the bush, and just let them go. So when they're out there, there's no fences, no leashes or collars. They're free to just run as they please. Of course, we keep them within eyesight. But now, they go for about an hour and a half at a time. They always come back. They're smart animals. They're very aware that they have food and safety and shelter here. So there are opportunities for the public to go out on those walks as well. So through an advance booking, you can go out on a walk with our wolves. We have never lost a person or a wolf yet, so that's a pretty good track record. Basically, the fences are here. They have to be here for government regulation, but it is for the wolf's protection and not yours. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, I can introduce you to our pack. And I always like to start with Wiley, but I'm not sure where he is right now. Oh yeah, there he is. So Wiley is the big guy snoozing behind the culvert there. And you can see his younger self on this photo up here as well. So he is our largest and oldest wolf at the center. He is starting to show it a bit. We're not going to tell him that though. So he's 15 years old and 110 pounds on an empty stomach. Now, average lifespan of a wolf in the wild, 3 to 6 years. Not very long at all. That's it. And in captivity, about 10 to 15. So at 15, we can compare Wiley to a 98-year-old man. He is getting up there. Now, 110 pounds is also quite large. Average weight's about 60 to 100. So being large and old, he's starting to get a bit stiff in his back end. Now, aside from that, he's doing really well for his age and size, so he just got a vet check this fall, and he got a fairly good bill of health. Now, this young lady up here is Flora, and her brother, Scrappy Dave, I can see snoozing in that far back enclosure there. And those gates are all open. They've just got nice straw bedding in there. So Scrappy and Flora are our youngest wolves at the center. They're 4 years old. They are full brother and sister, but they look very different, and they act incredibly different as well. So Flora up front here, she is our traveling ambassador. That girl goes into elementary schools all across BC and Alberta to help teach the kids about wolves. There is not a whole lot that bothers Flora. Her brother, Scrappy Dave, on the other hand, he's just a bit of a chicken. He should have feathers. He's very aware of his surroundings. He'll notice if anything's been moved around the enclosure. He's not a fan of long car rides. So he wants no part of those school missions. That's all Flora. And that's kind of where Yogi comes in. So Yogi is that little black dog in there. He is not a wolf. He likes to think he is one, though. So Yogi's a rescue dog. He was just found on the side of the road by the Saskatchewan River crossing, and he just so happens to get along great with our wolves. So he gets the best of both worlds. He's not in there full time. He gets to be a wolf all day and then sleep on the couch all night. So he also now, just as of recently, has become Flora's companion animal. So when she does go into those schools, Yogi goes along on the drives with her to keep her company on those long drives, and they're a pretty hilarious duo walking into the auditorium together. So now, the two wolves you'll see straight up off this deck here, and if you haven't checked them out yet, please do after the talk. those are Mac and Moki, and they have a bit of a different story. Because as I was saying, with the imprinting having to be done at a very young age, Mac and Moki came to us at 3 months old, so we actually completely missed the window. And you would think a little 3-month-old puppy would still be young enough to imprint on. Unfortunately, with wolves, it's not. So they did try everything, just like these guys. They hand-fed them lots of treats and gave them lots of love, and it didn't work. So they're quite aloof, like wolves you'd see in a zoo or in the wild. They are fearful of people, and they're therefore the only wolves at this center that cannot go on those off-leash walks. Now their enclosure runs behind this one. They do have a bit of extra space to get away from all the people if they feel they need to. Now, Mac and Moki came from a zoo in Alberta. The government shut it down. Not a very nice place. Now when they tried to rehome the animals, they realized not a lot of the animals even had permits. So they took the easy way out and sent all of their fur-bearing animals to fur farms. So that is where Mac and Moki came from. For those two, it was death or life in that enclosure, unfortunately. Now if you do stand on the edge of that deck and you look off to your left, there's 2 more wolves there, and that's Moab and Kita. They're hard to spot. Their enclosure's a little bit off of viewing there. Now, we call them our sweethearts because they get along really well with each other, but nobody else. So Mo is not our biggest or oldest wolf, but he's pretty dominant, and him and big ol' Wiley, they've had to have been separated for 10 years now. Oh, wow. So it makes it a bit of a puzzle around here because not everyone gets along. Now the last piece of the puzzle is Kita. So Kita's the only wolf here who's not 100% gray wolf. She's a wolf-dog cross. So 75% wolf and 25% husky Malamute. And Kita was originally a pet. So she was living on a farm, and her job was to guard chickens. I'm sure you can all imagine how well that turned out. It didn't work out. Who gets a wolf dog to guard the chickens in the first place? Right? So I'm sure Kita had a great time, but that poor girl was swapped around to 6 different homes before the age of 2. So she didn't have a very good start. And then at 2, she was just dumped in a wildlife shelter, and she was due to be euthanized. Now that's where we picked her up from. She's 12 now, and her and Moab have been totally inseparable ever since. So that's a happy ending for Kita, not so much other wolf dogs. Over 80% of them are euthanized before the age of 4. So we here at the center, not advocates of owning wolf dogs as pets. We do just ask that if you or anyone you know is considering it, to just be sure to do all of the research. So that's our pack here, guys. Now we can talk a bit about wolves in the wild. Do you guys have any guess how many species of wolves there might be in the whole world?
4.
That's a really good guess. Nice one. So there's 2. It's quite deceiving. That's great. So you often hear the big numbers, 20, 30, but there is only 2. Now, the Canis rufus, the red wolf, genetics show that's a mix between a wolf and a coyote. That's kind of odd, because in the wild, wolves and coyotes are not friends. Also, it is a fairly new species, but they've both been around for many years, so how come they weren't naturally breeding ages ago? So some biologists have theories that maybe that didn't happen naturally, that man bred and released them. But at this point, there's no solid evidence, so they are just guessing. Now, the red wolf is endangered. There's less than 1,000 left in the world, and they're only found in the southern United States and the eastern parts of Canada. They've even had captive breeding programs to try and help those populations, and they've been totally unsuccessful. So everything they bred and released died. Kind of odd. Yeah. Now everybody else, 100% gray wolf, Canis lupus. So all the names you hear, like Arctic, tundra, timber, coastal, European, even the dingo down in Australia is all the gray wolf. So they are genetically identical. They're just classified by where they come from and what they look like. Just like humans, really. We can come from all over and look and act totally different.
So what happens if you run into one when you're just on a walk?
So you know what? A healthy wild wolf will be running far away from you before you even see it, because we're their only predator. So they have a pretty high natural fear of us. Now, if they're rabid, if they're habituated and they've lost their fear of people, then it could be a different story. Same with a lone wolf. So a lone wolf has about a 1% chance of survival. So if you do see a lone wolf, he might be struggling. So then there's those things you have to consider in as well. But as I said, there's never been that documented attack of a healthy, wild, and non-habituated wolf. So as long as you're running into one of those, you're good. They'll be far gone before you even see them for the most part. So where was I now? I totally lost my train of thought. So let's talk a bit about pack structure. Now, wolves run in families called packs, of course, and within their packs, they actually have an incredibly firm social structure. So at the very top of the pecking order are the alphas, and that's a male and a female. It's mom and dad. The alphas are the only breeding pair in the pack, so no one's having babies but them. Now, right under those alphas are betas, and betas are there to step up in case anything happens to mom and dad. They're kind of just waiting for their shot at running that pack. And the bulk of the pack are wolves called subordinates. So those are your working force, and the numbers can vary. Here in the Rockies, a lot of human activity. Our packs will only get between about 4 and 8, but if you go way up north to where there's less people and more food, then they can get to 25 or more.
Wow.
So it really just depends on that availability of food and space. Now, at the very bottom of the pecking order is a wolf called Omega, and an Omega could be old, sick, or injured. They could be perfectly fine, but for some reason, they're not hunting with the pack. So they have a very special job. They actually just stay back and puppy sit, which is a pretty sweet job if you ask me. It's also really important. So puppies are born weighing about a pound or a half a kilo. Yogi, are you done being a wolf? He's like, I'm done, let me out of here. So they're born weighing about a pound or a half a kilo. They are deaf and blind for the first few weeks of their life, and they'll get milk from mum for about 6 to 8 weeks, but they're not hunting with the pack till they're 10 months to a year. So having Omega there to watch over them is basically grandma babysitting the kids. It's pretty amazing, really. Now, the Omega and the puppies, they do still need to eat, so in order to feed them, the pack will go out and make a kill. Everybody just fills their bellies at the kill site. Now, when they get back to the den, those puppies will smell the meat on their breath, and they just start licking. So they lick and lick and lick until bleh, they cause an involuntary regurgitation. So they'll throw up a good portion of their food for them. Gross, but already chewed up, filled with digestive enzymes. It's definitely the best thing for those puppies, and that is how the Omega eats as well. So it's also very smart because they're not having to drag any carcasses back to the den. So basically a home-cooked meal in your stomach. Now that we have that wonderful image in our heads, do you guys have any guesses on what wolves might eat in the wild?
Rabbits.
Rabbits, totally. So they are opportunists. They're basically going to eat anything they can get those paws on, but they're not just meat eaters. So about 3 to 7% of their diet is vegetation. They're eating things like grass and berries. They're also not picky. They'll eat a dead animal. A free meal is a free meal, right? They'll eat rabbits and squirrels and bunnies and, well, rabbits and bunnies and small game like that, but it's quite literally fast food. So only if you can catch them, and then it's going to take a whole lot of squirrels to feed your whole pack. So their main source of prey are animals we call ungulates. And that's kind of just a fancy word for a split-hoofed herbivore. So things like deer, moose, elk, bighorn sheep, even buffalo. And if there are a few things we know about ungulates, they run fast, they fight back, they've usually got antlers. So when the wolf pack does hunt, they're not preying on the biggest and the strongest. They're not looking for that trophy rack like people do. They prey on the old, the sick, the injured, and the less fortunate. And I know that that sounds incredibly mean, but by doing this, they're helping to improve the overall health of that herd. So they're taking out the diseased and sick elements, and the gene pool is actually benefiting from it. Now, even though they're preying on the old, the sick, and the injured, only successful in 1 out of every 10 hunts. So they are better scavengers than they are hunters. And that means that in the wild, they're lucky if they eat once a week, maybe 4 times in a month, not very often at all.
Wow.
So basically constantly starving. Now, so when they do make those kills, they'll eat the bones, the fur, the skin, everything but the stomach and its contents. And that is actually where the term wolfing down your food comes from. They can also eat 25 to 30% of their body weight in one sitting.
Wow.
So big ol' Wiley, 110 pounds, if he was to dine at McDonald's, don't know if they'd let him stroll in there, but 120 quarter-pounder cheeseburgers. So probably wouldn't want to eat for a week after that either, right? Now, here at this center, we feed about 50% donated or purchased meat. So if a farmer did have a chicken or a cow that wasn't producing anymore, they're welcome to put it down and bring it to us. We'll throw it to the wolves. If we have to go buy a hunk of meat from the grocery store, and sometimes we do, think $100 to feed these guys for 1 day. So not ideal. So ideally, we want roadkill. Roadkill is the closest thing we'll get to their natural diet. They get that whole animal, bones and all, plus it's already dead, so why not use it, right? Hi guys, you're welcome to join on up with us over here. So here in BC though, they make us pay for roadkill. And we don't pay for a service, that would make sense. We go out there ourselves and scrape it up off the side of the road. We bring it back here, fill out about an hour worth of paperwork, and then send the government a check for $60 before we can feed it to our wolves. It's crazy. Hey, you'd think they would be paying us, right? Now here at the center we won't feed anything living, and that is partly just because it wouldn't be fair to throw a live animal in there with fences of wolves. But secondly, in the wild they're killing and eating because they're basically starving, and here where they're very well fed, maybe they'll play with it. There could be a bite here, a bite there. No one wants to see that. So everything that goes in there for food is just already dead. Now, a few fun facts about these guys. So wolves can bite at 1,500 pounds per square inch. Now that's twice as strong as a German Shepherd. It's just 500 PSI less than a garbage truck crushing garbage. They can see just a bit better than us in the daytime, about 100 times better at night. They can smell up to 2.5 kilometers away, hear a human talking 8 kilometers away, hear another wolf howling 10 kilometers away.
Wow.
They can walk 2 to 4 kilometers an hour, trot 12 to 18, and run 65 kilometers an hour while holding that speed for up to 20 kilometers.
Wow.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And it's all due to some adaptations. So when you guys do head out through the gift shop, you can take a look at the glass sculpture we have of Wiley's paw. Those feet are massive. And they are also webbed. So of course webbing helps work as snowshoes in the winter and swimming paddles in the summer. And if anyone gets up and walks around, you might be able to see they have a very unique way of walking. So it is different to a domestic dog. It's called cross-tracking. And that's where the front foot will meet the opposite back foot. So by doing this pattern, they're able to travel quite efficiently. And in the wild, one pack's territory can be anywhere from 100 to 2,500 square kilometers. And essentially in the wild, your territory is your refrigerator. So if you've got that big family to feed, you're going to need the big territory. Now their coat is consisted of 2 layers, and the underlayer is a down that keeps them warm up to -40. So they are incredibly comfortable in the winter. That outer layer consists of hollow guard hairs that act like a jacket to help repel water. They do have 3 main ways of communicating, so they howl, but they don't howl at the full moon. That's just a myth. They howl to communicate in general, and when they are howling, they never hit the same harmonics at once. So this pack of 3 wolves howling might sound like 10 or 15. So it is a bit of trickery. They can whine, gruff, and growl, but they cannot bark. So that's something we've bred into the domestic dog over the years, not sure why. Now, another way of communicating is scent. So you might notice they've all got this big black spot on their tail, and that's actually a scent gland. So they also have those glands on the paws of their feet, on their face, and up their back. Now the third way of communicating is body language, and we can actually tell who's dominant and who's submissive by the way they interact with each other. And although big ol' Wiley is old, he still really holds his own around those young bucks in there. So when he's trying to show everyone who's boss, he'll put his ears straight up and his body will be held very tall, and his tail will go straight out. Now if Scrappy and Florat, to show him a bit of respect, they'll put their ears back and their body low to the ground, and the tail will go right up between the legs. If for some reason that doesn't stop his growling and his teeth showing, they just turn belly up and pee themselves, and that works every time. You know what, I'd probably do the same thing if Wiley was growling at me. Excuse me. So guys, we understand that they're incredibly interesting animals, but what a lot of people aren't aware of is they are also incredibly important. So the wolf is a keystone species, and if you've never heard that reference, I always like to picture an archway. So your top middle stone is your keystone. If you're to pull that out, your archway is going to collapse. So the same thing happens to our environment when we take out that top predator. A perfect example of all of that is Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone is one of the biggest and oldest parks in North America. It's actually older than Canada. Back in the early 1900s, the parks were based a bit more around recreation and viewing than conservation. So they had the idea that they were going to go in, take out all those top predators, and have a large population of ungulates or deer and elk that would be nice to look at. So they did that. They completely extirpated the wolf, and they'd shot their last one by 1926. Extirpated means that it no longer existed in that area. Well, it took just a few short years, and they started to see major changes within the park. So the rivers were changing direction. The trees just stopped growing. Nobody could figure out why. Beavers packed their bags and left. Birds of prey were disappearing, insects, songbirds, everything was just falling apart. Nobody knew what was going on. So that was around 1926. 1950 came around and a new park warden came in. And he basically looked around and said, something is wrong here. How come there are no cottonwoods, aspens, or beavers in Yellowstone? So he did a big study. And what he came back with was pretty interesting. Because without those wolves there to push around all the ungulates, they were acting like cows. No predators anywhere, nobody had to look over their shoulder for nothing, and they literally laid around and ate everything. They ate themselves out of house and home. So they had overbrowsed the trees to the point where trees couldn't even grow anymore. And then the beavers felt that, because beavers are another keystone species. Yes, they'll munch down on the little trees and get their nutrients, but they use them to build dams which flood wetlands, and those wetlands are homes to thousands of other animals. So everything felt that cascade effect. They call it a trophic cascade. Such a beautiful word. So they knew what that issue was in 1950, and it took them a swift 45 years to act on it. So it wasn't until 1995 that they came to Canada, and they captured 35 of our wild wolves from northern BC and Alberta, and they flew those guys into Yellowstone, placed them in 4 corners of the park, and they started to see changes within 2 years. Within 8 years, everything had returned to normal. So all that damage repaired in just 8 years. And it really is amazing. All the wolves had to do was hunt. As soon as they started pushing around all those ungulates, all the trees and shrubbery had a chance to replenish themselves. And Yellowstone is doing great now. So